15 Golden Age actors who hid they were gay until the day they died. What if those sweeping fairy tale romances Hollywood sold us were nothing more than illusions, crafted for the screen, but never real? Behind the glamour, many of the industry's brightest stars lived very different lives, forced to bury their true loves in the shadows to protect their careers. Now, it's time to peel back the curtain and uncover the secrets they carried to the grave. And among them lies the haunting story of the man who once brought Superman's greatest enemy to life, a story you won't soon forget. Rock Hudson. Rock Hudson. The man whose story shook Hollywood to its core. In the 1950s and 60s, he was the ultimate leading man. Tall, impossibly handsome, and radiating a gentle charm that made audiences fall in love with him. On screen, he was the perfect romantic hero in Pillow Talk, the rugged figure of strength in Giant. To the world, Rock Hudson was everything. The man every woman dreamed of marrying, and the man every other man wanted to be. But behind that golden facade was a very different reality. Born Roy Scherer, a shy boy from Illinois, his public persona wasn't something he created. It was carefully manufactured by his powerful agent, Henry Wilson. And at the heart of it all lay a secret Hudson was forced to hide. He was gay. In an era when such a truth could destroy a career overnight, the studios went to extraordinary lengths to protect him. Dates with glamorous actresses were staged, and in a desperate move, he even entered a short-lived marriage with his agent's secretary, Phyllis Gates, to keep the rumors at bay. For decades, Hudson lived two lives: the adored Hollywood star and the man privately yearning for authenticity. Then came the mid-1980s, and with it, a turning point no one saw coming. Hudson fell gravely ill, diagnosed with AIDS, a disease both new and terrifyingly misunderstood. When he revealed his condition to the public, the revelation sent shockwaves across the globe. The man who had embodied America's ideal of masculinity was not only gay but also battling this mysterious and deadly illness. His brave confession put a human face on the AIDS epidemic and forced the world to confront a reality it had long ignored. The most guarded secret in Hollywood had finally been exposed, but in the most tragic way possible. Rock Hudson's story remains a haunting reminder of the crushing weight of conformity and the human cost of keeping up a perfect illusion. And yet, he wasn't the only heartthrob forced into a carefully crafted image. The next star on our list, a blonde, blue-eyed teen idol, would find himself trapped in a strikingly similar struggle. Tab Hunter. Tab Hunter. If Rock Hudson was Hollywood's tall, brooding hero, then Tab Hunter was the sunlit golden boy, America's poster child for innocence and charm. With his blonde hair, sparkling blue eyes, and dazzling smile, he became the ultimate 1950s teen idol. His face graced every movie magazine, his voice topped the music charts, and audiences flocked to see him in films like Damn Yankees. To Warner Brothers, he was the wholesome dream date every girl wished for, the perfect boy next door. But behind that picture-perfect image lay a secret just as dangerous as Rock Hudson's. Tab Hunter was gay. And like Hudson, he was carefully managed by the ruthless Hollywood agent Henry Wilson, a man who specialized in burying the truth about his clients. To protect the illusion, Hunter was paraded around town with starlets like Natalie Wood and Debbie Reynolds, a staged romance for the cameras. Then came the threat of exposure. Confidential, the notorious gossip magazine that thrived on destroying reputations, discovered Hunter's hidden life and prepared to publish. What happened next revealed the cutthroat brutality of old Hollywood. To protect his golden boy, Henry Wilson struck a merciless bargain. He betrayed another client, actor Rory Calhoun, feeding the magazine dirt that would ruin Calhoun's career, all to keep Hunter safe. Tab's secret survived, but at a cost. Though adored by millions, he lived under a cloud of fear, forced to navigate a world where one whisper could end everything. Even so, he dared to love. Hunter entered a serious relationship with a fellow actor, a man known for his dark, tortured roles on screen. Ironically, that man's private life was just as haunted by turmoil and inner conflict as the characters he played. And that leads us to our next star, whose most unforgettable role was one of the most disturbed characters in film history. But as we'll see, the demons he fought off-screen were every bit as chilling as those he portrayed under the spotlight. Anthony Perkins. Anthony Perkins' entire career was forever tied to one chilling role. He was Norman Bates, the nervous, awkward, and deeply disturbed motel owner in Alfred Hitchcock's masterpiece Psycho. His performance was so hauntingly convincing that it clung to him like a shadow for the rest of his life. Critics praised his sensitive, almost fragile style of acting, but audiences couldn't separate the man from the character. To many, Anthony Perkins was Norman Bates, strange, secretive, maybe even dangerous. What few knew was that the nervousness on screen wasn't all make-believe. Perkins carried a lifetime of anxiety, much of it born from hiding who he truly was. He was a gay man in an era that punished honesty with career suicide. In Hollywood, he lived in fear, keeping secret relationships, like his romance with teen idol Tab Hunter, far from the spotlight. Terrified of exposure, he tried desperately to reshape himself into society's definition of normal. In a move that stunned those who knew him, he married actress Barry Berenson and had 2 sons. By all accounts, he loved his family deeply. But the inner battle never really disappeared. Perkins' life became a portrait of the crushing weight of conformity. Just as Rock Hudson had, he too was taken far too soon by complications from AIDS. And like so much of his life, he chose to keep his illness a secret until the very end. It was a final act of silence, a mirror image of the hidden world he'd been forced to live in, much like the character that made him a legend. Perkins was remembered for his intensity, his vulnerability, and his unforgettable presence. Yet even as he carried that shadow, another star of the same era was celebrated for his smoldering looks and revolutionary acting style, while quietly concealing a secret just as profound. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift was unlike any other male star of his generation. While Hollywood idols like Rock Hudson embodied the smiling, square-jawed hero, Clift radiated something far more raw: intensity, fragility, and a haunting vulnerability. Alongside Marlon Brando and James Dean, he pioneered method acting, bringing a striking realism to the screen in classics like A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity. His beauty wasn't the conventional kind, it was brooding, soulful, and magnetic. Audiences couldn't look away, drawn not just to his looks but to the emotional depth he poured into every role. Off-screen, however, Clift lived a life of turmoil. In an unforgiving era, being gay was a burden that filled him with shame and pain. He wrestled with his identity in silence, never finding true peace. His one safe harbor was his deep friendship with Elizabeth Taylor, who became his confidant, his shield, and one of the few people with whom he could drop the mask. Then came the night in 1956 that changed everything. Leaving a party at Taylor's home, Clift's car slammed into a telephone pole. The crash destroyed his famous face, forcing multiple surgeries and leaving him in constant agony. To numb both the physical pain and his private torment, he turned to alcohol and pills. What followed was a long, slow unraveling that the press grimly dubbed the longest suicide in Hollywood history. At just 45 years old, Montgomery Clift's extraordinary life came to a tragic end. He had been a brilliant, groundbreaking talent who shattered Hollywood's mold but never found happiness in his own skin. His story stands as one of Hollywood's most heartbreaking tragedies. But if Clift's fall was devastating, the next star on our journey, hailed as the original Latin lover of silent cinema, met an ending even more shocking and even more tragic. Ramon Novarro. Long before Rock Hudson became Hollywood's golden boy, there was Ramon Novarro. In the 1920s silent film era, he wasn't just a star, he was one of the brightest names in the world. Born in Mexico with dreams of stardom, Novarro arrived in Hollywood armed with dark, striking looks and an aura of romance. Studios quickly branded him as the Latin lover, placing him in direct rivalry with Rudolph Valentino. His breakout came with the epic blockbuster Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ, a colossal production that turned him into a household name. On screen, he embodied exotic charm, passion, and allure. Off-screen, however, life was far more complicated. Ramon Novarro was both a devout Catholic and a gay man, identities that clashed painfully in an era when neither Hollywood nor society was forgiving. The conflict haunted him throughout his life. Studio head Louis B. Mayer tried to protect MGM's leading man by pushing him into a so-called lavender marriage, a fake union arranged to mask his truth. But Novarro refused. He chose to remain single, a decision that made him an anomaly among matinee idols of the time. When the silent era gave way to talkies, Novarro's career began to dim. Unlike so many stars who lost everything, he had been careful, investing wisely and securing himself a comfortable, if quieter, life outside the limelight. But fate had a far darker ending in store. In 1968, at the age of 69, Novarro's life came to a shocking and brutal end. Two young men he had invited into his home turned on him, committing a crime so violent that it stunned Hollywood and left an indelible scar on its history. For a man once celebrated as one of cinema's most radiant icons, it was a tragic, horrifying final chapter, one that exposed the hidden dangers of living in secrecy. Novarro's legacy was one of romance and exotic mystery, but Hollywood had another Latin lover, one who kept his secrets with effortless charm and mischief. His name? Cesar Romero. If you ever tuned in to the 1960s Batman TV series, you'll remember him as the Joker. Green hair, white makeup, and that unforgettable manic laugh. In fact, Romero was so attached to his trademark mustache that he refused to shave it off for the role. Makeup artists had no choice but to paint right over it. That tiny act of defiance revealed exactly who he was: suave, unapologetic, and always in control of his own image. Cesar Romero. Cesar Romero was a man who lived life entirely on his own terms. For decades, he was one of Hollywood's most familiar faces, always charming, full of energy, and immaculately dressed. Audiences adored him as the suave, debonair Latin gentleman from Manhattan, a role he played so convincingly both on screen and off. Over a career that spanned more than 60 years, Romero became a constant presence in films and television, a professional beloved by colleagues and fans alike. To the public, he was a confirmed bachelor, a perennial playboy who never settled down, always arriving at glamorous parties with a stunning actress on his arm. It was the perfect illusion. Behind the scenes, Romero was gay, a truth he guarded with remarkable discretion. He crafted a public persona so polished, so convincing, that few ever questioned his bachelor lifestyle. Unlike many of his peers, he managed his private life without scandal, maintaining friendships, earning respect, and radiating the charisma that made him the life of every room he entered. Romero's story is striking not because of turmoil, but because of how seamlessly he balanced two worlds. He lived fully, without ever seeming tortured by his secret. By building a persona that let him thrive in the industry he loved while protecting his truth, Romero didn't just survive Hollywood's unforgiving spotlight, he conquered it. He passed away at 86, remembered not for controversy, but for grace. He played the Hollywood game to perfection, and he won. But not everyone chose the same path. The next actor on our list faced an impossible ultimatum from the studio: abandon his partner or lose his career. His choice shocked everyone. William Haines. William Haines, a name that many may not recognize today, yet his story stands as one of the most powerful from Hollywood's golden age. In the late 1920s and early 1930s, William "Billy" Haines was a sensation. One of the top 5 box office draws in America, he won audiences over with his wisecracking charm, his cocky swagger, and a smile that lit up the screen. Handsome, hilarious, and magnetic, he looked unstoppable, a man on top of the world. But unlike most of his peers, Billy carried a truth he refused to bury. At a time when secrecy was the unspoken rule of survival, he lived openly as a gay man. Since 1926, he had shared his life with his partner, Jimmy Shields. They were more than companions. They were a devoted couple who built a home together. In the freewheeling 1920s, Hollywood turned a blind eye. But by the 1930s, as morality crackdowns swept through the studios, the most powerful man in Hollywood, Louis B. Mayer, came knocking with an ultimatum. Mayer told Haines to end his relationship with Jimmy and stage a lavender marriage with any woman he wanted. In return, he could keep his stardom, his fame, his fortune. But Billy Haines didn't flinch. Looking Mayer straight in the eye, he gave a response that became legend: "I am already married." With those 4 words, he chose love over Hollywood, and his career ended that very day. Yet Billy and Jimmy would not be erased. Together, they built one of the most successful interior design firms in Hollywood, decorating the homes of stars like Joan Crawford and even Nancy Reagan. While Hollywood turned its back, their love endured, a partnership that lasted nearly 50 years. Haines may have lost the silver screen, but in the end, he won something far greater: the freedom to live authentically and the dignity of never betraying the man he loved. Clifton Webb. Clifton Webb was unlike any movie star Hollywood had ever seen. He wasn't the rugged leading man or the charming heartthrob. Instead, he carved out his fame later in life by portraying characters who were razor-sharp, sophisticated, and unapologetically snobbish. His breakthrough came in 1944 with Laura, where he embodied the acerbic, cynical columnist Waldo Lydecker, a role so magnetic it earned him an Oscar nomination and set the tone for his entire career. Audiences loved him as Mr. Belvedere in Sitting Pretty, the eccentric yet brilliantly efficient babysitter, a character so iconic Webb would return to it 2 more times. What made his persona so unique was that Hollywood never packaged him as a romantic hero. He wasn't a playboy bachelor like Cesar Romero. Instead, he was the meticulous, fastidious man, set in his ways, uninterested in marriage, and seemingly devoted to his mother, Mabel. She was always by his side, his constant companion until her passing at the age of 91. To the public, it looked like a sweet portrait of loyalty between a dutiful son and his beloved mother. But behind that polished image, Clifton Webb was quietly living his truth as a gay man in a time when such openness could destroy a career. The witty, slightly effeminate characters he played weren't far from his real self. His bachelor persona became the perfect camouflage, hiding him in plain sight, where no one questioned him because his private reality and public image aligned so perfectly. In the end, Webb mastered something few stars of his time could. He controlled his narrative. His life and career became proof that sometimes the best disguise isn't reinvention at all, but leaning into the very character the world expects you to be. And while Webb hid behind his carefully crafted image, our next actor entered into one of Hollywood's most curious open secrets, a marriage to a famous actress that was more arrangement than romance. Charles Laughton. Charles Laughton was nothing short of a giant, on stage, on screen, and in the hearts of audiences who watched him transform into anyone he chose to be. A master of character acting, he slipped effortlessly into roles that defined entire eras of cinema. The monstrous Captain Bligh in Mutiny on the Bounty, the heartbreaking and lonely hunchback of Notre Dame, and the commanding King Henry VIII, a performance that earned him an Academy Award. He never fit the mold of a traditional leading man, yet his raw power, emotional intensity, and sheer versatility made him one of the most respected actors of his generation. For over 3 decades, Laughton shared his life with Elsa Lanchester, the talented actress forever remembered as the Bride of Frankenstein. To the world, they were a quirky but inseparable artistic duo, often appearing together on screen, their marriage seen as an eccentric but devoted union. But behind the curtain, their relationship carried a truth the public never fully understood. Laughton was a gay man, a secret that weighed heavily on him. According to Elsa's own autobiography, she discovered the truth early in their marriage. Yet instead of parting ways, the two forged a different kind of bond, one rooted in deep friendship, mutual respect, and a shared love for their craft. Their marriage became both a sanctuary and a shield. It gave Laughton the public cover of a conventional life while allowing him the privacy he so desperately needed in a less forgiving era. But his inner turmoil never disappeared. It lived within him, fueling his art. That pain, that struggle, became the fire behind his unforgettable performances, where vulnerability and power existed side by side. Laughton's marriage was a delicate arrangement, a pact of loyalty and survival. But as we'll soon see, our next actor took an entirely different path to hide his truth, going so far as to invent an entire family to conceal his longtime male partner. Raymond Burr. For millions of television viewers in the 1950s and 60s, Raymond Burr wasn't just an actor. He was the embodiment of justice. As Perry Mason, the brilliant defense attorney who never lost a case, Burr became a household name. Week after week, audiences watched him dismantle prosecutors with his booming voice and commanding presence. Later, he reinvented himself again as the tough, wheelchair-bound detective in Ironside, proving he could dominate the screen in any role. To the public, Burr was serious, respectable, and the very definition of masculinity. But behind the polished image, Burr lived a life shrouded in secrecy. He went to extraordinary lengths to protect his private world, weaving a fictional biography that fooled the press for decades. He spoke of a tragic marriage to an actress named Annette Sutherland, who he claimed had perished in the same plane crash as actor Leslie Howard. He even told of a young son, Michael, who died of leukemia at the age of 10. It was a heartbreaking tale that explained his bachelorhood and won him sympathy from millions. The truth, however, was very different. Annette never existed. Neither did Michael. They were inventions, carefully crafted characters in Burr's off-screen drama. The real love of his life was Robert Benavides, a fellow actor and veteran he met in the 1950s. The two shared more than 3 decades together, running a vineyard and cultivating orchids far away from Hollywood's glare. By building a fortress of fiction, Burr carved out a space where his real life could quietly flourish, safe from scandal in a time when the truth would have destroyed his career. On television, he was the indomitable hero. In reality, he was a man hiding in plain sight, one of the most successful deceptions in Hollywood history. Burr played the nation's favorite attorney, but the actor who followed him became something else entirely: America's favorite dad. Robert Reed. To an entire generation, Robert Reed was the embodiment of the perfect father. As Mike Brady on the beloved sitcom The Brady Bunch, he was calm, wise, and endlessly understanding, the steady patriarch at the heart of television's most cheerful family. With his good looks, dependable demeanor, and warm smile, Reed became the ultimate symbol of wholesome fatherhood. For 5 seasons, and through countless reruns, he wasn't just Mike Brady, he was America's dad. But behind the laughter and sunshine of the Brady Bunch set, Reed often felt like a man trapped in the wrong story. A classically trained Shakespearean actor, he bristled at the show's light-hearted plots and simple humor, frequently clashing with its creator as he tried to bring more realism and depth to his role. Yet even those artistic frustrations were nothing compared to the secret that weighed heaviest on him. Robert Reed was a gay man in an era when such truth could destroy a career. To protect his image as the nation's favorite family man, he lived in silence. He never brought a partner to cast parties, never shared his real life with co-stars, and carried the burden of hiding who he truly was. His TV children later admitted they sensed his unhappiness but never understood the source. Reed was living a painful contradiction, celebrated for portraying the ideal husband and father while being denied the freedom to live openly as himself. When he passed away, the truth emerged not through a tell-all, but through his death certificate, quietly confirming what so many had long suspected. The man who embodied the perfect American family had been forced to conceal his own. Robert Reed will forever be remembered as the ultimate TV dad, and his story is a haunting reminder of the personal costs of keeping up appearances in Hollywood. And if Reed was television's hidden father figure, our next star was his opposite, the world's most flamboyant showman, who spent his career dazzling audiences while ferociously denying the truth about his own life. Liberace. Liberace. There has never been, and likely never will be, anyone quite like him. He wasn't just a pianist, he was a spectacle, a larger-than-life phenomenon beloved as Mr. Showmanship. On stage, he was pure excess and enchantment. Rhinestone-studded suits sparkled under the spotlight, fur capes flowed behind him like royal robes, and his fingers, glittering with more jewelry than a king, danced across the piano keys. He arrived in Rolls-Royces, placed a candelabra on his piano, and transformed concerts into carnivals of glitz and glamour. For decades, he wasn't just popular. He was one of the highest-paid entertainers on earth. With his winks, his smiles, and his unapologetically over-the-top style, his truth may seem obvious now. But in the 1950s, the world wasn't ready. When a British newspaper dared to suggest he was gay, Liberace didn't just deny it, he sued them for libel. In a stunning twist, he won, swearing under oath that he was straight and waiting for the right woman. That lie became the foundation of his public persona, and for years, he defended it with ferocity. Even as his act grew more flamboyant, his private life remained carefully hidden. But secrets don't stay buried forever. In the 1980s, the illusion shattered when his much younger partner and chauffeur, Scott Thorson, sued him for palimony. The scandal was explosive, a tabloid feeding frenzy that exposed the private world Liberace had spent a lifetime concealing. And still, the final act was the most dramatic. In 1987, when Liberace died of AIDS-related complications, his team desperately tried to cover it up, claiming a heart condition had killed him. Only when the coroner insisted on revealing the truth did the world finally see the reality behind the rhinestones. Liberace lived and died on his own terms, grand, dazzling, and drenched in drama. His entire career was built on being larger than life, and even in death, the show went on. George Nader. George Nader. In the glittering world of 1950s Hollywood, George Nader was every bit the picture of a leading man. Tall, handsome, and undeniably talented. He carved out a respectable career, starring in B-movies and dramas, and moved within the same glamorous circles as some of the industry's brightest stars. Among his closest friends was Rock Hudson, the era's ultimate heartthrob. Both men were represented by the powerful agent Henry Wilson, who carefully crafted their public images while hiding the truths that could destroy them. Yet, unlike Hudson, George never broke through to superstardom. He worked steadily, built a loyal following, and quietly shared his life with his partner, Mark Miller, a love that began in the early 1950s and endured for decades. For a time, their relationship remained safely hidden. But Hollywood was a dangerous place for gay actors. and the notorious gossip rag Confidential eventually turned its spotlight on Nader. Just as it had nearly ruined Tab Hunter, the magazine published insinuations about Nader's private life. The scandal was enough to cripple his career, shutting him out of the very industry he had worked so hard to succeed in. This is where his story intertwined with Rock Hudson's once more. Hudson, who knew the constant terror of exposure, never forgot the price his friend had paid. Years later, when Hudson had become one of the highest-paid stars in Hollywood, he quietly found a way to protect Nader. In his will, Hudson created a trust that guaranteed George and Mark a lifetime of financial security, a silent but profound act of loyalty and generosity. It was Hudson's way of saying thank you, and of taking care of the friend whose life had been shattered by the same secret they both carried. Nader's career may have been cut short, but his story remains a poignant reminder of both the cruelty and compassion that coexisted in Hollywood's golden age. And while his chapter ended quietly, the next actor on our list became a star by playing a troubled teen, a star whose life would end in a violent and shocking way that stunned the world. Sal Mineo. Sal Mineo rocketed to stardom as a teenager in the groundbreaking 1955 classic Rebel Without a Cause. Acting alongside James Dean and Natalie Wood, his heartbreaking portrayal of Plato, the lonely, vulnerable boy yearning for love, earned him an Oscar nomination at just 17 years old. With his dark, expressive eyes and raw emotional intensity, Mineo became Hollywood's sensitive bad boy, a teen idol unlike any other. But fame is fickle. As he grew older, the roles that once made him a star began to vanish. The teen idol image faded, and he struggled to redefine himself as an adult actor. Yet, in the freer atmosphere of the late 60s and 70s, Sal began living more authentically. He shared his life with actor Courtney Burr in a long-term relationship and, in rare interviews, spoke openly about his sexuality, a bold act of courage in an unforgiving era. Slowly, he rebuilt his career on stage, earning praise as both an actor and director. Just as it seemed he was poised for a powerful comeback, tragedy struck. In 1976, at only 37 years old, Sal was walking home from a play rehearsal when he was ambushed in the alley behind his Los Angeles apartment. A single stab wound during a robbery ended his life. It was a senseless act of violence. Yet instead of treating it as such, the prejudices of the time led police to speculate about his private life, rumors that proved baseless. He wasn't caught in scandal. He was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. The world lost a remarkable talent just as he was reclaiming his voice. Sal Mineo was a star of the 1950s whose light was extinguished far too soon. But while his story ended in tragedy, his legacy lives on. And if Sal's rise and fall defined the 50s, our next actor would go on to capture hearts in the 60s. This time, not as a rebel, but as television's beloved doctor who carried a secret for decades before finally revealing his truth. Richard Chamberlain. In the early 1960s, Richard Chamberlain wasn't just a rising star. He was the star of television. As the noble and impossibly handsome Dr. Kildare, he captured America's heart almost overnight. With his clean-cut, all-American looks and magnetic charm, fan letters poured in by the thousands every week, turning him into the nation's ultimate heartthrob. After leaving the hit show, Chamberlain proved he was no fleeting sensation. He went on to dominate the screen in epic miniseries like The Thornbirds and Shogun, while also earning acclaim in film and on stage. For decades, he embodied the very image of the romantic leading man. But behind the carefully polished Hollywood facade was a truth he could not share. Chamberlain was a gay man living in an era when such a revelation could have shattered his career. In private, he built a quiet, devoted life with his longtime partner, actor and producer Martin Rabbit, far away from the spotlight in Hawaii. For years, he maintained the public image expected of him, never allowing the world to glimpse the reality of his personal life. It wasn't until 2003, at nearly 70 years old, that Richard Chamberlain finally told his story in his autobiography, Shattered Love. He admitted that decades of secrecy had left him living in constant fear, draining his spirit and wounding his soul. He confessed that hiding who you are takes an unimaginable toll. His late-life decision to come out became more than a personal revelation. It was a powerful testament to the suffocating pressures faced by gay men in Hollywood's golden era, and to the courage it takes to finally live in truth.